Growing up, I almost never heard the words Huntington's disease. My parents were quite religious, and they had received comfort from the church that HD was something they didn't need to worry about. I didn't really understand anything about Huntington's when my dad told Megan and I that my mom was sick. I knew that my grandmother was sick, and I had some vague understanding that it was a genetic condition, but we had been told we weren't at risk, and so I never really thought about it. My first reaction was just to be really angry, that I had gotten this far in my life and nobody told us about this thing, and that my parents had clearly hid from it for my whole life up until then.
Until Jeff's father told us that his mom had Huntington's, I had never even heard of it. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what it meant to Jeff. I didn't even know it was fatal.
I was angry that Megan and I had been married for 6 months and nobody had bothered to tell us, by the way, you might not want to haul off and have kids because you might be at risk for this thing. So there was a lot of anger was the first thing for sure. I had a whole year I had to spend in Kosovo or training to go to Kosovo, so I had a lot of downtime to think. I had no scientific background. I hadn't taken a science class since grade 9. I really started researching Huntington's because I just wanted straight answers. When I got out of the Army, Megan and I moved to Vancouver. And then I started at UBC, not realizing that the clinic here is probably the best clinic in the world for Huntington disease patients, which was complete luck. And it turned into this really remarkable career path that never would have been open to me in almost any other city in the world. I knew on a gut level that I was going to get tested. I just can't imagine not knowing. I don't know how I would live my life with that maybe. That seems much scarier to me than the potential of living with a yes.
I never had any doubts that Jeff would get tested, and it just never even occurred to me to stop him. I don't think that's something that we could live with, not knowing.
It was about second year of school that I actually started the testing process. I guess I always try to kind of prepare for whatever's coming. The way you deal with something like this is you act like you have a positive result, even if you don't.
Leading up to getting the results, children were constantly on my mind. I got more sentimental towards children because we didn't think there was any possibility if Jeff had the gene that we would be having children.
I felt a strong sense that the responsible thing to do was to not have a kid who was at risk.
I remember seeing a child and just knowing that that was not going to be us if the result was positive. I just instantly felt sad.
I always had a little hope for the best, but generally my energy was directed towards being braced for bad news. The counselors and everybody else throughout the testing process, they're very big on sort of educating you about the day, because they know that when that day comes, you're gonna be a mess. And it actually is a huge comfort to sort of know exactly what's gonna happen. They're just gonna ask you if you want your results, and if you do, they're gonna give them to you, and that's it. When you walk in the room and you sit down and your heart's going a million miles an hour, I think your reaction is so intense, and yet the environment is so calm that it's one of these very surreal, time stands still kind of moments. And then they basically open this envelope, and everything, kind of comes to this point. And they look at you and the doctor says, "I'm sorry, but you've inherited the mutation. And as far as we know, this means that you'll get HD if you live long enough."
My first thought was, oh my God, he's going to die.
It's a bit like when somebody dies, you feel like the world should look different, the heavens should open, something big should change, but in fact, it doesn't. It almost felt kind of not real, maybe in a way, that everything around me was exactly the same, and yet everything was different for me. Megan was really upset. Definitely for Megan, it was much more of a shock. I'm sort of a big fixer, and so I'm thinking, what can I do? Now what?
Me sort of having my breath knocked out of me, and Jeff just basically asked for a job. You start to think about sort of like your future together and what that means as a part of a couple, what that means as an individual, being a caregiver.
Went out that night, got dressed up, went to a really nice restaurant, drank a bunch of wine, basically celebrated in a way, because what else are you gonna do, really? The waiter asked us what we were celebrating, and I said, "Oh, we just got really tragic medical news," which worked to our benefit because he felt really terrible and gave us a bunch of free booze.
That day, I was changed forever, and I didn't quite understand how I was changed. It became a real thing and not just a notional, Jeff might have Huntington's. It became something that you now had to live with.
The thing about this news in particular is that you're never gonna not know your status again. You can never turn back the clock and go to maybe again. You're always, one way or the other, going to know for sure.
You just have to carry on like you're normal and try to get as far as you can. I guess I ignore the fact that I'm sick. Maybe that's a good thing.
John is now just 61 and still going strong. And although he has a lot of challenges, he is incredibly focused at work still. So things are just so much better than I ever anticipated that they would be. You're all set. Good weather this morning.
Every day you worry them you're gonna fall running, fall when you go to work and injure yourself so badly that you won't be able to work.
Are you all right?
When I see him fall, it's hard to see, but I know he's just gonna get up and, you know, I've patched him up so many times. I know he's gonna get up and try to minimize it. So I figure if he's gonna minimize it, I'm not gonna try and make a big deal out of it.
You okay? Here. This, you're bleeding. Here, this on your head.
But he's still active. He's still determined to try and do that at whatever level he's able to do it. And I think that's pretty amazing. We started dating towards the end of high school. I remember how he tried to get a seat on the bus with me. We rode the same school bus.
She's extremely important. Yeah. Without her, I'd probably be pushing up daisies somewhere.
When we realized we were interested in something for a long term, he told me about his father's family history of Huntington's disease.
I was pretty young, and my father, he told me what it was. He said you might inherit a genetic disease later in your life.
Just sit down. That's probably just as easy. Sit down there. His father showed obvious symptoms of Huntington's at a fairly early age. At home, he was very difficult for John's mother to manage, and he went into long-term care in his 40s.
It was kind of very sad because he'd raised us well. He'd been a good father. It affected me quite a lot.
You'd be sitting in emergency for most of the day, and we haven't got time for emergency room visits.
Not if you can patch me up.
Not if I can patch you up, that's right. I'm the lousiest nurse, but I've learned a few things. I had not heard of Huntington's. Prior to that, I didn't know anything about it. John wanted me to be very sure that I was willing to take that kind of risk if we were going to stay together, because it would be something that we would have to think about if we were going to think about having children. We were young, and things happen all the time. So we were willing to take that risk. But I was well informed.
How often does this happen? Once every 6 months?
Maybe once a month.
Probably.
Once a month, we're patching you up. There. Good to go.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. Can I just have a shot?
Yeah, I know.
Being a scientist, you always want to know what the answer is. It was just important for me to know, because if I didn't have it, I could live a different kind of life.
I supported that decision. I think for him, he was quite confident he would be able to rule it out. When we did get the results, when we went into that office, I remember it clearly walking into the office, sitting down. I had this sinking feeling that it was not going to be good news.
Remember on the way back, but I could be very sad and disappointed. It was the worst day of my life because I was kind of expecting the opposite result.
I could tell that he had a lot of difficulty accepting this.
We had insurance, but when I got the test results, they wouldn't cover us anymore. I felt that it didn't seem fair, but what can you do? But that wouldn't have stopped me from being tested.
Still on the home, so who knows? Maybe we'll be back.
Still come back?
Yeah. Is that? I was becoming curious because I was suspecting my mother. And I saw symptoms and she came and going, this is just not right. Everybody kept saying she had a drinking problem. And she was getting that prance-like routine. She was walking into things. And I was going through the genetic study. I was watching my mother get worse and worse and worse. At the end of it, I had a choice, find out or not find out. I chose not to find out. I was not emotionally ready. I didn't know how my husband would handle it. I didn't know how I would handle it.
I wanted her to be tested, 2 reasons. One, she's always been a fighter. She's had several stages of cancer. I knew her character. I know that taking it and dealing with whatever the outcome would best serve her needs for moving forward.
I said, no, I don't want to know. Which I think my husband was disappointed in. As he said, you know, knowledge is your best friend, but I was not emotionally equipped to know at that time. I did not tell anybody when I went to get tested, even my husband. And I went by myself. I chose to do it on my own, and then I'll tell my husband when it's time. Harold had it. Uncle George, Uncle Frank, Charles had it, and that's Grandpa, David had it. My grandfather was one of 10, and 5 siblings from that family did pass from Huntington's. My mother was one of 7 children. 4 of them had Huntington's. 50% of the kids have had it or more have had Huntington's. Once I found out that I did not have Huntington's, it just was a huge burden lifted. Most people you would think would run home, right home, guess what, I don't have it. That wasn't the way I wanted to deal with it. I still needed to process the fact I don't have the gene. I was really surprised, excited. I did not tell anybody. I was afraid that if my siblings knew that I didn't have it, I know them like a book because we all think very similar. At least half of us are going to get it. So we feel. You just play a numbers game. So Theresa doesn't have it. There's 7 of us. So which one's going to get it? Things are going to play in their mind. The chances are getting stronger of me getting the disease. I just felt that they were not going to handle it well. I just didn't think it was a good thing. That's very scary for me because so far in 4 or 5 generations, the firstborn has always got it. There's a glare that they get in their eye. They look off into the distance and you can see them. It's just a look. It's a funny stare.
It was a difficult time with Tom because we were so close. I think Tom always had a sharp mind and quick wit and, you know, a funny guy and all that stuff. Always wanted to tell the joke at parties and things like that. And then at the end, you know, mentally just can't communicate, can't get nothing out. It was sad to see.
Tom was in that nursing home for 4 years. And each year, we could really see the difference of how it progressively got worse. I had to feed him every day for about a year and a half. It wasn't the fact that he couldn't hold the fork, he couldn't put it to his mouth. He missed his mouth constantly, so it was just, and he'd get mad, he wanted to do it, so you have to let him try that. Tom had a temper at the beginning. It was tremendous temper. He wasn't accepting it well. I got hit a lot. And so you didn't know what time you were getting any one day. And if you got a little too close once in a while, he'd take a poke at you. And then in the last 6 months, they wanted to put him on a feeding tube. Tom and I had always made an agreement that that would never happen to him. And I told him that I would chew the food first and put it in his mouth if he had to, but he wasn't going to go to a feeding tube.
I used to try to go over there on Sunday afternoons and watch Lion games with him, but he'd sit in his little rocking chair and put on his little lion cap, or we'd put it on for him. But you know, he really didn't even know what was going on. It was really hard to watch him at that point because of, you know, he was sitting there, he's breathing, but really communication-wise, it's just the mind's gone. It's shot. Basically, it was an empty shell, you know, mentally.
I think that he put such a brave face on it. I mean, right up to the very end.
Right at the end, he finally kind of gave up. He just kind of finally knew that it was time.
People like Jeff have two choices. They could choose to keep it out of their lives, stay away from it, or they can say, as Jeff did, with great courage and dignity, what can I do now?
You know, for me, that's probably a coping mechanism. You know, somebody presents you with this big, awful thing, and you can either sort of fall over dead or you can engage it. And so for me, engaging meant saying, okay, I want to go farther. I want to do that.
He's living with it. His family's involved with it. Now his work is involved with it. Where was there some respite for Jeff? And I was worried that this would be too much for him to bear.
I had pretty much given up on having kids because I had put this out of my mind. We were never having our own biological children.
In my head, I certainly decided that I wouldn't have kids. If I had had kids, I would just have assumed that all my children were positive because that's just how my brain sort of looks at the world. But now, all of a sudden, there were options, including this thing called pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, which is a way of screening embryos. And then by simply only implanting the embryos that don't have the mutation, you can avoid the risk of transmitting the mutation.
So when we found out about PGD, it immediately gave us some hope. We did not want to put off having children. Out of the 5 embryos that were tested, 2 came back negative for HD.
2 looked good and healthy and didn't have the mutation. And they told us you basically have to either implant both of these or one of them, or that's it for this round. So we made the decision, somewhat impulsively, I guess, in retrospect, to go ahead and implant both of them.
Both babies took. Both babies took. And I had a twin pregnancy that was a high-risk pregnancy and not a lot of fun. They were premature, but they were perfect in every way. They just needed to grow. Both were really, really small. Billy was 4.5 pounds and Elijah was 3.5 pounds. So it was a big day and a big relief. There was a lot of press about their birth. They were Canada's first PGD babies to eliminate the Huntington's gene.
Huntington's kind of dropped out of the picture once we had babies. You know, all of a sudden we just had babies. I knew that I didn't have to worry about HD. And so with respect to my family, HD became a compartmentalized problem. It's my problem and that's okay for me because I don't have to look at my kids and project this problem into the future. Okay, go. I can live with the idea of me dying if they don't have to go through this too. That's the big, amazing thing about PGD is that it lets future generations go free. You know, we've basically freed them from this thing. There's other stuff. They're gonna have problems in their life and I can't fix everything, but this thing doesn't happen to them, and that to me is the biggest thing in my life.
Knowing the result, I think it helped give us time to plan.
How do you guys feel? Are you up for it?
We did lots of whitewater canoeing. We've canoed in the Northwest Territories. We've hiked in the Rocky Mountains. We love wild spaces that Canada has to offer and took advantage of them. You value the time that you have when you're reasonably healthy and do things so that you can look back and say, oh, I did do the things that I wanted to do in the time that I had, when I was able to do them.
Started to show some symptoms. I used to kind of get angry and depressed as well. Thinking about the effects that would have on your kids. There's lots of reasons to be depressed.
He would just explode over some insignificant thing, just be difficult, which he'd never really done before. He'd always been pretty calm and, relaxed about things. And that just escalated over time.
Once when I was diagnosed, for the first 5 years, I wanted to commit suicide. I had thoughts of death every week, probably almost every day. But see, the psychiatrist, he prescribes antidepressants that I take every day. It made my life much more bearable. I can go to work for the day and not get depressed and go home at night and not be angry.
I'm stimulating once every 10 seconds, so I'll stop that.
He always says he needs to get his vitamin D, so he sits outside at the hospital to have his lunch. And I think on more than one occasion, he's been taken indoors by security. And I jokingly say that I think people think that he's a homeless person out there. And he tells them, well, I work here, and they just kind of look at him and they have to check out whether he really is someone that works in the hospital. This is another one of our sort of standing jokes about his appearance. You can't change it, so you might as well accept it and make light of it if you can.
It wasn't right away that I even told my husband. It took an argument, knowing me, that he made a comment about, gee, do you think you should get tested? And if I recall correctly, that's when I kind of slam back. I've been tested and I don't have it. So that would be the normal way I would handle things.
I was very proud that she had the courage to get tested, because I think it's a matter of courage for some people. And she's the type of person that deals best with what you know. We all do deal better with things that we know.
I don't really think it's a courage thing. It's terrifying to have that gene. You live with it every minute of your life. It doesn't go away. You second guess yourself constantly. You look at your children, you look at your grandchildren. Even if I had the gene, I wouldn't have changed one thing I've done in my life, nor the way I've handled it.
Mama was gonna take care of you when you're old.
I felt she needed to have that because it worried her. But I hadn't told her before the wedding because, again, I was afraid it was going to get out to my sisters and brothers. And at that point, you know, at her wedding, it was leaking among the siblings. My Uncle Tila came up to me and asked me to dance, and he just whispered to me, because I'm so glad that you don't have it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And from that day forward, it was common knowledge. We have the conversation often about getting tested and not tested, and their arguments are, why no? Why torture yourself if you know you have it? My argument to them is knowledge is your best friend.
I think if you really knew, you'd change your life. You change the way you do things. You change the way you wake up in the morning, what you're going to try to accomplish in a day. I wonder if you'd give up. God, it could change your life. You could take all the life out of you. I say, think about it a little harder before you really need to know. I think you just take what life gives you.
I've never seen you do it.
If they say they don't think about it every day, they're not telling you the truth. If you've got the gene in your family and you have that 50% chance, it's playing on your mind every single day.
We're at a family party, it's joke of the night, who's got Huntington's, and you know, if somebody forgets something or can't find where their beer's at or where their pop's at, hey, you know, you got it, and it's a big joke. We laugh about it.
What's your name again? You know my memory's gone.
We joke about it, but it's real because there's so many been affected. Every day it seems like my mind starts going anyway, and I don't know if that's age. You know, I can't find my keys. You can't, you know, you forget names and all that stuff. So, but every time that happens, it's like, do I have this disease or not? You know, and that's a scary thing.
Look at Jeff, who he is today, and you're just like, that's never gonna happen. It feels like it's so far off, but it might not be as far off as we think.
My mom had a really tough life. She was happiest when she had babies. I think babies were my mom's great moment. You know, she had 6 kids, 2 years apart or so. So for 12 or 13 years, she had babies, and she had people that loved her and that she loved. And I mean, I can't even imagine this little tiny woman taking care of 6 kids under the age of 13, you know, like it's pretty remarkable when you think about it. Right at the end of her life, she had a horrible kind of crash. It made everything just go to hell overnight, almost literally. I walked into that room and saw her on the floor, like nothing prepared me for that. In Washington State, they have this law. You're not allowed to restrain people in nursing homes to beds. But when somebody has massive involuntary movements, to the point where they're tearing at their skin accidentally with their fingernails because their fingers are writhing across their chest and they're literally like ripping their skin. What would really be the nice thing to do would be to restrain them to the bed and keep them from hurting themselves, but they actually aren't allowed to do it. And in this case, the only thing they could do to give her any comfort was they had, mats on the floor in the corner of the nursing home room. She can't speak, she can't do anything, and so she's basically lying in this room on the floor in a corner of the room, just writhing, For the first time in my life, my mom doesn't know who I am and doesn't respond to my presence at all. It was the moment at which your parent is no longer a parent. All that's there is sickness.
At that point, I think you turn off your emotional side. You have to. And what you end up doing is just going into, to the mode of caretaker.
To see her was to see possibly what my husband is going to look like. Every time I saw her like that, it made me fear for Jeff.
The nursing home said, well, your mom has a do not resuscitate order. No feeding tube, no, I think, aggressive antibiotic, nothing. Basically, if something's gonna kill me, let it kill me.
I had a moment with my mom. Everyone will have their moment, I was laying with her on the mats, and I just kept telling her, Mom, it's gonna be okay. We're gonna make sure you're okay. But I remember she looked at me, and I think she was just telling me, I'm okay. Let me go.
The worst thing in your life is what happens to your children. So I would often think about them, worry about if they were carrying the gene. I think every day I would worry about them.
As a mother, I feel responsibility, having had children. You do feel the weight of that your entire life until you finally get the results.
I didn't see a reason to be tested because I didn't see how it would change my life. Eventually I decided that I wanted to get the test because I decided I wanted to have children. If I tested positive, it would influence how I did that, and I would probably do in vitro fertilization and ensure that I didn't pass the gene on. If I didn't have the gene, then I could just go ahead and make babies the way everybody else does.
Jessica was 32 before she was tested. So for 32 years, it's hanging over your head.
I think I prepared myself for the possibility of testing positive, and then if it went the other way, then I was going to be jubilant, and I was. Yeah, it was pretty amazing finding out I didn't have the gene.
I just broke down. I think John fell. It was just one of those moments that it was like so wonderful and such an amazing relief.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yay.
To Jessica's
Cheers.
success.
Jessica.
Yeah.
Hooray. Good job, Jess.
Hooray.
You did good.
Good.
Hooray.
I didn't do anything. The genes just worked in my favor, I guess.
That was a pretty amazing day, and we really celebrated.
This is a 50% risk You were lucky in one. Was it no the other? Would you think would be positive? Yeah.
So we have to write all the words we can find.
Okay, I like this one. This is a good one. Of course.
I was pretty sure I had it because I was experiencing motor issues. I was twitching a lot. I wanted to be able to plan my life appropriately, basically, you know, to know how much time I have until, you know, I won't be here. But then me wanting to know became an issue.
So Dad, you can get a couple.
I had been really discouraging it because if he was going to test positive, I thought that might affect his ability to cope with his mental health issues.
Our son has schizophrenia, so it's enough for him. He did not cut it with one thing. I mean, I would have thought he's kind of free to make his own choices. Wanted to be tested.
Wait a minute.
Hey, you're cheating again. Can't skip over this. Cheater. My sister had this calendar. It said, "Today is a day for miracles." And that was the day he went in for his result. So when she read that to me, I just thought, oh my God, can this really happen? Can we really have this miracle?
When I went to get the results, I was fairly calm. I wasn't really sure what to expect. When we actually went in to get the news and she told us, I sort of started crying, and I was really happy and that I didn't have Huntington's and that I knew that I didn't have it and it wasn't a mystery anymore, you know, when you have to balance your life with that, so.
I broke down when I got the results because I was so concerned about what it would mean if we didn't get the result we were hoping for.
It's probably the best news I've had in my life.
I said, yes, today was a day for miracles. Both of our children ended up testing negative.
I asked Kelly just prior to her getting married 2 years ago, I said, Kelly, if you want me tested, because you're gonna get married now and hopefully have children, I'll go get tested.
I don't want my dad to be tested for me because it wouldn't change how I live my life. I don't believe that I want to know right now, and I don't want my dad to live his life wondering when he's going to start showing signs, and I think that he might second guess himself and might start, you know, thinking signs are there when they're actually not, and I don't want him to have to live his life out like that.
For better, for worse.
For better, for worse.
For richer, for poorer.
For richer, for poorer.
In sickness and in health.
In sickness and in health.
To love and to cherish.
To love and to cherish.
Till death us do part.
Till death us do part.
I give thee my troth.
I give thee my troth.
If I have it, Kelly has a 50% chance of getting it. If Kelly has a child, that child has a 50% chance.
I don't see a day that I'm ever going to want to be tested. It's not going to affect whether I have kids or not, because again, there's a lot of different things that we have in our family that any family has that I could pass down to my kids, and I don't want to live my life in fear, and I don't want to live my life any differently knowing I have the gene or not.
One of the things that I asked Kelly when she was getting married, I says, do not let this disease ever stop you from going forward in life and having children. I want you to have a family.
And so when people would ask me, what should I do, doc? And I'd say to them, well, this is your choice. These are the pros, these are the cons. And somebody would say to me, well, you know, I think I need to know. I'm needing to decide if retirement is going to be hiring a motorhome or hiring a nurse, whether I need to refashion my house. Another person would say, you know, I don't want to know because I don't think I can cope with it. For both of those people, fully informed, I'd say to them, it sounds like that's the right decision for you.
As time goes by, I think I've really incorporated the idea that these kids don't have HD now. Every day that they're alive and you look at them, that's like a huge triumph, you know?
Nice.
Their birthday now is like a birthday just like any other birthday. It's a day for the family to get together.
All 6 of us are tested for HD. Stacy and Beth got tested before me, and I was the 3rd tested, and now ultimately all of us have been.
I decided I wanted to be tested because I don't deal with surprises well. I want the facts, and then I can deal with it.
But I felt opposite. I felt like I don't need to do this. I don't want to know my fate, kind of thing. When my sister Beth got tested, then I remember at that point feeling like I just need to do this. If I know, then I'll be able to plan better. I'm a planner. I'm the oldest, so I'm always the one making sure things are in order.
What's interesting about it is that I had decided that I knew already. For some reason, I thought I knew I was negative.
But I had totally convinced myself that I had this disease.
And when they told me I was negative, it was almost like, well, I knew that.
I don't remember much more than you do not have the disease. And I just remember it being a complete and total shock. I thought I heard them wrong. They later told me that they had never met somebody who had so thoroughly convinced themselves that they had the disease as I had.
Yay! Deep down, we all wanted to believe that we were going to be 6 for 6, negative. I remember when Jeff called and told me his results. I almost started to break down over the phone, and he told me, he said, I called you first because I knew that you wouldn't cry, and I have to call everybody else. So I kind of bit my upper lip and held it together the best I could, but it was devastating.
You feel a lot of guilt. Why did I escape it?
Right. Kids would all run out of Whitby and eat open.
You hardly sleep the night before, and you go there, and I just wanted to, slice right through it, but yeah, it was a difficult thing to learn that I had the gene and that my repeat was indeed close and similar to my mom's and my brother's.
You can prepare yourself all you want, but you're just still never fully ready to hear that. I think there's a certain piece of you that's still gonna be hopeful for the best, no matter how much you try and prepare yourself for the worst.
All of them had been tested by the time my little sister got tested before me. So they call me the baby of the family because I'm just kind of the last to come around with most things. But I tried not to think too much about what I thought the answer might be, even though it's hard. But I really tried when those thoughts would start creeping up to really fight them back. And then it just kind of took me off guard because I wasn't even, I guess it's good. He just ripped the Band-Aid off and I wasn't prepared for it. So you're kind of in shock for a second, and then the reality of what you were just told hits you. And my biggest problem with it, and I knew it was going to be hard for me, is the guilt you feel about your whole family, just having to experience that again, and it's hard for the individual, but it affects every single person in your family. So it's hard to realize that they have to go through all this one more time, And you almost just want the answer to be no, just so we don't have to go through that again.
You just say, oh God, why again here? I was personally deeply distressed. And I just couldn't believe that we were spinning a coin 4 times and we would get the same result 4 times in a row. It was actually heartbreaking because I also wanted to give Jeff and each one of them some relief. And you wanted to give them some way to not worry about each other.
My sister Beth and I have talked a lot about it. I think all of us are just committed to holding on to hope still at this point. If we think about it too much or we dwell on it too much, it's almost like we give permission to give up hope that there'll be a cure or that there'll be some therapies in the future. So yeah, we think about it and we talk about it, but at the end of the day, we're all healthy right now, and I think we just need to enjoy that.
I find work kind of very stimulating. Every week I probably read over 100 science papers. What's even more important, I just trying to make a small contribution, even when you're sick.
I'm not a science person at all, but I think it's pretty amazing what he's been able to do. He's just an incredibly focused person, and if he decides that this is something he really wants to do, he'll just focus on that.
It does a lot for your brain. I think it's part of the therapy. If I'd retired, I'm sure I'd be dead by now.
Figuring out how brains work well enough to stop them from dying in degenerative disease is the most complicated thing we've ever done. Landing on the moon is easy compared to figuring out the human brain. I'm optimistic that there will be treatments in my lifetime for people living with the disease now. If I wasn't optimistic about that, I wouldn't keep working. There's easier ways to spend my life, but the idea that I could kind of contribute to something that I really believe is getting somewhere is too huge,
I'm certainly proud of Jeff. I'm proud of the way that he works. I am proud of how we don't treat it like it's going to ruin our lives. Right now, we just need to keep working on what we're working on and raising our family and providing the best life that we can.
I guess I ignore the fact that I'm sick. Maybe that's a good thing. You just have to carry on like you're normal and try to get as far as you can.
I gotta try to organize my life in a way that if I do get sick and do die, that things are okay for my family. I would still like a pill. I want to watch my kids graduate. I want to see my kids get married, but hopefully I can still contribute in some small way to what I think is a really impressively exciting effort to curing the disease. Everything that can be done is being tried. So either there'll be a cure for me and I'll be the luckiest guy ever, but if there's not, it's not because we didn't try.